Hi everyone, I'm Jenna Callahan from the Powassan Area Family Health Team, and welcome to the Mindfulness series. This video in particular is going to be based on sleep and how we can help ourselves using mindfulness to improve our sleep. So this video in particular is going to talk about sleep, the issues that cause trouble sleeping, and how mindfulness can be used as a tool in helping us improve our sleep. Sleep is actually a really essential part of our health and our functioning. But despite this, this is probably one of the things that we prioritize the least in our days. And is always the thing that will be sidestepped if we have other things that we're prioritizing first. So here are some of the important stats we should know about sleep. Uh, we're supposed to get on average about 7 to 8 hours. That's the recommended amount. And about 2/3 of people don't achieve it every night. And actually up to 10% of people have the potential to meet those of the diagnostic criteria to meet the diagnosis for chronic insomnia. Now, when I talk about insomnia, I'm not talking about sleep deprivation. Those are two separate things. So sleep deprivation is actually scheduling problems that are made up by a lot of our issues in life. So this could be somebody who is overworking and they get home from work at really late hours and then have to wake up very early the next day to start working again. That's sleep deprivation. So that's like a scheduling issue. When I talk about insomnia, insomnia is you have all of the time that you need to get that 7 to 8 hours worth of recommended sleep. However, you just can't do it. It boils down to an inability to fall asleep or stay asleep despite trying to. So those are the differences there. If you do have any sort of issues with sleep deprivation, I definitely recommend freeing up your schedule in some sort of capacity or trying to prioritize sleep as being a part of that schedule as much as you can. So issues with sleep are often noted as either beginning or being worsened by unhelpful thinking styles and behaviors. So what this means is that the sleep issues could stem from something else. Like, for example, people have very realistic sleep issues that come from sleep apnea or restless leg syndrome. However, the thoughts and the behaviors that accompany those things could worsen the sleep issues in and of itself, like the anxiety or the stress that comes with those things. So here are some of the most commonly listed sleep issues. For example, sleep apnea, diet, lack of exercise, pain, restless leg syndrome, depression, stress, and poor sleep habits. So keep this list of issues in mind, and we're going to actually come back to it a little bit later. So here are some of the problems that actually are associated with having sleep issues. These are the things that if we have chronically poor sleep, then these are the effects that are going to come at us day to day. So, obviously fatigue, a lack of alertness. There's also impaired memory. So really what sleep does is it helps us assist in solidifying our memories while also assisting us with what we call the procedural memory. So what that is helping us with those tasks that we don't really have to think about a lot. They're kind of under our conscious mind. Things like riding a bike, driving, swimming. So we don't really have to think about these things. They're kind of we just go about and we do them, and it works out great. But if we are having sleep issues in the short term, our ability to progress with those tasks gets diminished. And I think that we see that a lot in in driving in particular, because if someone is having issues with driving, it's quite noticeable. Some of the other short-term problems are quality of life. So by this, I mean, really, it's lacking our motivation to socialize, cook, exercise, engage in our hobbies that we enjoy. And those are the things that get diminished if proper sleep is not constantly attained. And then finally, interpersonal issues. And this could be with our family, friends, spouse, children, bosses, anything. It could really be, it comes from errors in communication, our own irritability, or lack of patience, and just general disinterest. And those, again, are impacted by us not feeling very well rested. So, some of the longer term consequences of not getting appropriate sleep consistently, we lead into high blood pressure. Essentially, the research from what I looked into doesn't say what the cause of that would be or why, but that there is a relationship between those two things. I'm not sure if the high blood pressure is causing sleep issues or if the sleep issues are causing high blood pressure. I'm not sure. Talk to your doctor about that if you do have high blood pressure and sleep issues. Maybe they'll know more. Um, Issues with obesity. So, what the research indicates in that is that less sleep actually leads to increased food intake, having a bigger appetite, and more hunger, which is really interesting. So, lacking sleep could also lead to an increase in our neural responses. So, like literally brain chemistry. It could lead us to having a higher interest in unhealthy foods, meaning that now we're eating more, we have a bigger appetite, and we're eating all the wrong things. Great. Um, Being tired also just leads to less physical activity. And interestingly enough, having a high variability in sleep. So if you're having like some good nights, some bad nights, a lot of hours to very few hours, there's less synchronization in like our eating patterns. So say for example, you work like half nights, half days. I know that there are some miners out there, for example, um, that becomes a big issue in not having the set eating time every day. It's always changing. Um, and of course, having chronic issues with sleep is going to increase the probability of someone drinking a lot of high sugar beverages, just, coffee, Red Bull, any sort of energy drink, just to be able to kind of maintain alertness and get through our day. And along with these long term issues is depression. So, people who are perpetually tired are less able to disengage from negative stimuli. So, what I mean by that is if there's always negative stuff going on in your atmosphere, like you have negative thoughts in your own brain, you're constantly worried about what's happening next or what you did yesterday, or you have negative people in your life, or you have a very high stress life, it's harder for you, for example, to put those negative thoughts away if you're more tired, which means that it could lead to depression. Depression and sleep issues are very bidirectional. So if you have sleep issues, it could lead you to developing depression. And if you have depression, it can lead you to having sleep issues. So they go both ways in that sense. And finally, lack of sleep issues lowers sex drive. Sleep actually impacts the hormone that increases sex drive, which is testosterone, um, and increase and lack of sleep actually decreases our ability to focus on pleasure and not on our stressful lives, which thinking about it makes a lot of sense. So those are the short term and the more long term common issues that are associated with lack of sleep. Mindfulness is something that can be very helpful to sleep. It's actually shown really great effects in studies. And we can define mindfulness as essentially being present in the moment, being aware of our thoughts, feelings, sensations in the environment around us, paired with the acceptance of everything as it is in the moment. So that sounds like a lot, but essentially the goal of mindfulness is to kind of stabilize the mind, decrease rumination. Rumination is those thoughts that are very nagging and they don't really go away, particularly about the past. And the other goal of mindfulness is to just become fully absorbed within a state of concentration. using techniques like breathing. So breathing is kind of like the staple of mindfulness. And if you can focus on your breathing, then you essentially are being mindful. There are other techniques as well. Another is visualization, kind of like this image that I have up here on the screen, where if you can visualize yourself in this image, if you can be in this image in your mind, picturing the colors, the sounds that you might hear, the way that the wood feels under your feet, or the different colors of the sky. Those are all ways of being mindful. If we're focusing on this image, as an example, then we're not focusing on our to-do list for tomorrow, or the way that you embarrassed yourself in the past, or any of those stressors that are constantly plaguing our lives. We have enough time in our lives to focus on all of those things, that if we can take just 10-15 minutes to focus on this very beautiful image and the colors that we see, it's going to have long-term health benefits to us, and it hopefully will help us fall asleep. So nighttime is a particularly difficult time for a lot of people because our brains and our bodies are so go, go, go throughout the whole day, and we're always keeping quite busy, that often nighttime is the first time for us to kind of settle in and reflect on what happened that day. Like, holy moly, what, not only what did I do today, but what do I have to do tomorrow that I didn't do today? Um, so I've heard from a lot of people that nighttime is a huge issue for them in not being able to shut their brain down and actually be able to fall asleep. So mindfulness encourages what we call the relaxation response. What the relaxation response is actually the counteraction to our stress response. And our stress response is the thing that makes our blood pressure high. It makes our breathing very shallow. It means our senses are heightened and we're just very alert. That's what the stress response basically is. It's always us being prepared for the next thing. So mindfulness encourages the relaxation response, which is us getting deeper in our breathing, us shutting off our alertness to the things that are going on around us, and just being able to essentially relax. A very good title. So the stress response obviously is not conducive to sleep. It's going to make our sleep very light. We're going to be more susceptible to waking up in the middle of the night. We're always going to be listening out for those sounds, kind of keeping that one ear open. Um, and the relaxation response is going to allow us to sleep a lot deeper and allow us to slow down our thoughts and our minds for good sleep throughout the night. So here we are, we're back at that image that I told you to keep track of from earlier. So mindfulness can help in every single one of these categories that are common sleep issues. For example, in sleep apnea, mindfulness cannot help people who are literally not breathing in their sleep. That is the hope that a CPAP machine would have for somebody. But there's a lot of stress associated and a lot of anxiety associated with a CPAP machine because it's something that goes over your face like this. It's kind of, it can be quite difficult to focus on sleeping with this big mask on your face and the cord that comes with it. So mindfulness can actually assist us in use of a CPAP machine and being able to accept the CPAP machine and not have those stresses and anxieties associated. Um, yeah. Diet. Obviously, we kind of talked about this earlier, where if you're not sleeping very well, your diet's going to suck. You're going to be more attracted to unhealthy foods, less likely to cook, more takeout, more calories. So if we practice mindfulness over and over, and it's a good practice, we're going to be sleeping hopefully better and our diet will improve. Same thing with exercise. If we have better sleep, then we can feel more energized throughout the next day to exercise and lower rates of obesity. Pain, I'm not going to get too into this in this one because I'm actually going to have a full video on pain and how mindfulness can really help pain. There's some really, really great statistics that go along with mindfulness being a good relief for someone who has chronic pain. So stay tuned. Those with restless leg syndrome, um, I've read, I don't experience it myself, but I've read that stress exacerbates the issue and makes it worse. So again, mindfulness can be used to accept the restless leg as it is, and to also hopefully lower that stress so the restless leg is not so prevalent for us as we're trying to sleep. Depression, we've already talked about that. Sleep and depression have this bi-directional relationship. So hopefully better sleep will help us fixate less on those negative thoughts, and lower our rates of depression. Stress, again, we're trying to shut off that stress response and be able to actually focus on um, being able to have control over our own thoughts, enter the relaxation response, and hopefully have better sleep. And finally, poor sleep habits. Sometimes the worst sleep habit is to just like watch TV or be on your phone, for an hour and then just like shut off the light and hope that you're going to be able to fall asleep. Adding mindfulness as a sleep routine and into our nighttime routines can help us wind down and slowly drift to sleep. A lot of the mindfulness apps that are used, you can have your alarm set for the next day. You can shut off your lights. You can go to the mindfulness app on your phone, shut your phone, like the screen off, put it face down on your, have it face down on your nightstand, and listen to it, and hopefully drift off into sleep, knowing that your alarm is still going to go off in the morning, knowing that it's just going to calmly shut itself off. Um, so that's one of the perks of having these apps on your phone. I can't speak highly enough of them. Mindfulness tips. This comes from a really personal place, actually, because mindfulness is very much a journey. And man, I stunk at it for a long time. I still sometimes do. If the day is just a lot, maintaining focus can be really, really hard. So these are my personal tips that I am giving to you, and hopefully it doesn't make you feel like a failure as much as I did at the time. So tip one is to start small. What I mean by this is don't try practicing mindfulness for an hour or like a half hour. Start with like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, very small, even like 1, 2 minutes, and just see how it makes you feel. That will get you comfortable with you trying to drift attention from one thing to another. Because the way that I relate to it is that it's trying to flex a muscle that you've never flexed before. Usually we just kind of let our thoughts go willy-nilly. So this is trying to shut those down, or put them away. So start very small and just get into that practice. Very small. I also recommend, particularly if you are trying to fall asleep, I recommend try body scanning in bed. The body scan is essentially focusing on individual parts of the body for certain amounts of time and just focusing on how they feel. So how does your foot feel against your bed? What's the pressure of the weight of your foot on the bed? Are you wearing socks? How do your toes feel? Are they brushing against the blanket? How heavy is the weight of the blanket? Do you feel any air fluctuation? Do you feel any sort of like temperature? Those things. And then move your way up the body into the calves, into the thighs, into the pelvis and the groin area, up into the chest and the breast and the up into the shoulders, down the arms, down each arm individually, and into the head and the face. Those things, oh boy, I can't stay awake for a whole body scan because it's so, so relaxing. So you can pull up a little meditation. They have them all over YouTube for body scans, just like a 5 minute, 10 minute, half-hour body scan, that you can access for free. Although with YouTube, unless you pay a certain fee, I believe, you have to keep your screen on. So that might not be like super conducive to help. But I'm going to have a list of other apps as well on the next slide. So trying one of those and just trying to focus. And if the thoughts come into your mind, which they will, put them away. So what I tend to do is I visualize putting my thoughts away. And I love the movie Inside Out. I don't know if the people here have seen that movie. Highly recommend. It's this cute little Pixar movie with these cartoon emotions. And the part that I kind of focus on is when they're going through memory, and every memory, every thought has its own colored orb. So, what I like to visualize in my mind while I'm trying to practice mindfulness is if a thought comes in where it's like, don't forget to call the doctor tomorrow, don't forget to walk the dog, don't forget to pick up groceries, what are you having for dinner? Those things, I'll just put them in an orb in my brain and I'll put them on the shelf and I'll leave them for later. Or if it's very pervasive and present, I always keep a notebook and a little pen or pencil beside my bed, and I'll just jot down what it is so I know for certain that I'm not going to forget it. So that's that. So yes, ensure that your screen is off if you're going to do a guided meditation. Make sure you have your alarm set and you're just good to go if you fall asleep. So really, it really does come down to simply refocusing the brain. And that's the help with guided meditation, is that there's always going to be somebody to tell you what to do. So even if you lose track of whatever it is that you're trying to focus on, there'll be someone to say, okay, now focus on your elbow and your arm. And then it'll kind of be that prompt to be like, oh crap, oops, like, oh, I was gone for a second. And you can shift it back. And my last little bits and tips and advice is no matter how challenging this can be in the beginning, this does not make you a failure if you cannot get through an entire mindfulness practice just focusing the entire time. With mindfulness, there's no end game. They call it a practice for a reason, right? It's just us practicing every day to just shut our mind off for a little bit. And some days will be really easy and some days will be really hard. So don't judge yourself. That's a big part of mindfulness in and of itself, is to not judge yourself for having these thoughts and having a harder day than others. Just try and put it away as best that you can, and not stress about it. There's enough things to stress ourselves out by throughout the day. So this shouldn't be one of them. Now there is going to be a guided meditation. I'm going to attach it separately if people want to try it out before bed. It's just going to be an audio clip that is going to be me going through, I believe, what is a body scan. Yes, it's going to be just a gentle, maybe like 10-minute body scan. So it's going to be somewhere around this video and it'll be clearly labeled. So try it out for yourself and see if you find any benefits. And finally, here we are. These are the resources that I talked about earlier. So the apps I recommend, I've used all three of these personally myself. The Insight Timer is free and it's fantastic. It really is. If you're just beginning, I recommend just trying the Insight Timer. They have like sessions that you can pay for that will follow on track for different things like stress reduction. I think anxiety is one of them where it's like multiple, but you can just search in the search bar sleep and a bunch will come up for you. Headspace is another great option. That's more of a subscription service. And I use Calm often, very often. They have really wonderful sleep stories that are kind of like the visualization that I did earlier with that image. And I love them. They're so great. Or you can simply YouTube sleep meditation. Remember, unless you pay, your screen has to stay on. So you may want to fiddle with that. Do what you can. Headspace actually has a Netflix series as well, which is like unreal. So you can check that out if you have Netflix. And below are some books and workbooks that you can check out if you're interested in mindfulness for sleep. So we have mindfulness for insomnia. This is a guided program. So it has exercises for you to practice as you go. The Magic of Sleep is actually by the same creator as Calm, and it's just kind of interesting. Talks about different cultural practices for sleep and some nice, cool like tips and tricks. It's a beautiful book. It really is. Just like visually, it's very visually appealing. And then finally, Sleep Rituals: 100 Practices for Deep and Peaceful Sleep. This is kind of similar. So those are the resources that you can check out. Um, and that's all that I have. So thank you for listening and best of luck with sleep.